Okay, we are continuing. Chapter Chav Zayin, chapter 27. Page 68. Page 68. We have now shifted gears, going away from the concept of just controlling oneself from doing the wrong thing, right? And now we introduced at the end of last class this idea of even being able to control oneself from things that are permissible. Essentially, what the Alter Rebbe is saying here is that there are different madregas, there are different levels of where we need to control ourselves. Obviously, doing the wrong thing, doing sins, doing things that are inappropriate, that goes without saying. What the Alter Rebbe is saying here, however, is that not only are things that are not kosher not okay, but even things that are kosher could be not okay. And that's the point. Why? Because really the name of the game, according to chapter Chav Zayin, is who is in control. Right? Whose agenda, or who's setting the agenda? That's the name of this chapter. So obviously, to do a sin or to do something that is clearly wrong, that goes without saying. But even something that is permissible, and the example that we gave last time was, for example, the idea of eating lunch. That Talmidei Chachamim would dafka push off eating lunch for a while. Even though they're going to learn Torah up until that point, and learn Torah again after they eat lunch, no matter what, still, the bottom line is by pushing off one's natural desires, that in and of itself is me setting the agenda. Adam, do me a favor, just open the window a little bit. It's a little bit warm in here. Thank you. So the question comes out, who's in charge? Now, this is a very, very good point of seeing the difference between what the Alter Rebbe has taught us in chapter 1 and what is, generally speaking, seen elsewhere in the world. In other words, the Alter Rebbe told us in chapter 1 that we have a nefesh elokis and a nefesh bahamis. Which means what? Which means it's not just a yetzer hara. The yetzer hara is very simple. The yetzer hara wants me to go and do something that is wrong. It wants me to do something that is a sin, an aveira, speak lashon hara, speak negatively about someone, feel depressed, whatever it is. That's the yetzer hara, obviously. But can the idea of even doing something like learning Torah be done in the wrong way? Well, if you're dealing with only a yetzer tov and a yetzer hara, then obviously not. Because the yetzer tov is saying learn Torah. The yetzer hara is saying go out to the movies. So you can choose. You want to go out to the movies, you want to learn Torah. That's it. That's the only choice you have. But the Alter Rebbe is teaching us a very, very deep idea here. That it's not just that we have a yetzer hara. We have a nefesh bahamis, which means it's a complete soul. What's the nefesh bahamis about? What's in it for me? Self. It's all about me. I am the focus. So therefore, even when it comes to eating kosher food, for example, a person could be pushed to do the wrong thing by the nefesh bahamis, but it's kosher food. So what do you want from the guy? He's going and eating in a kosher restaurant. So on the one hand, you could say, of course, it's so much better than eating in a non-kosher restaurant. It's obviously, you can't compare the two. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is on a different level altogether. What we're talking about here is that the nefesh bahamis could be the one who's in control of me. And that's what we're starting to discuss now. That even in the areas of being kosher and doing kosher things, it could be that it's my nefesh bahamis that is dictating the show as opposed to my nefesh elokis. And that's what we're trying to change here. And that's why the Alter Rebbe, at the end of last class, we described that he said that the Talmidei Chachamim, what would they do? They'd push off their eating lunch until the 6th hour as compared to the 4th hour. Why? What's the difference? They're learning all the time before and all the time after. What kind of food are they eating? They're eating kosher food, right? What's the problem here? So he says, no, because the idea is that even if it's kosher food, and even if they're going to learn before and after, nevertheless, if I can control the urges of my nefesh abahamis, so that is changing the equation in me. And that's what we're saying here. Let's continue from where we left off. We'll say where it's one thing that we said before. Let's say again. V'lo oid. We'll start again. Page 68. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines down from the top of the page. V'lo oid ela afilu b'dvarim mutarim. Even with things that are permissible. Legamre, in a complete way. Kol ma sheha'adam zoveach yetzaro. As long as a person is sacrificing his yetzer. Afilu sha'achas kala. Afilu sha'akala, even a small moment. V'miskavin, and he has in mind, right? There's an intention to it. It's not just that he's going on a diet because he wants to look better, right? But he has a kavanah behind it. Lachbia l'sitra acher, to bend the other side. Shebechal smoli. For example, kagon. Shechafetz le'achol. He wants to eat lunch. He wants to eat dinner. He wants to eat something. And instead he pushes it off for a little while, whether it's an hour or even less than that, or even in 1 minute. Like I told you last time, my teacher in Kfar Chabad used to say, before you sit down to eat, right, you have a whole plate full of food and everyone wants to just dive in, right? So instead, put down your fork. Put down your fork for 1 minute, for 30 seconds, for 5 seconds. Right? That moment is life-changing. Because now I'm establishing that I'm in charge of me, not my animals in charge of me. That's the difference between the two. But you could say, but who cares? It's 10 seconds. It's all kosher food, right? Everyone's eating yeshiva food anyway. Well, it's whatever. No comment, right? And oh, that was a low blow. Okay, anyway, right? But the bottom line is that what's the difference? Who cares an extra 5 seconds, 10 seconds? Why does that matter? Alter Rebbe is saying it's a global difference. It changes everything. Because whoever is in charge is the one that sets the agenda. And I have to recognize that I don't want my animal to be in charge. That's the difference. And especially if he thinks a pasuk or something like that at that moment. Like we said the example yesterday in the Gemara, that generally speaking people ate in the 4th hour, which was around 10 o'clock, right? And then he says, and the 6th hour, which is 12 o'clock, would be the time that the Talmidei Chachamim would eat. They would starve themselves. I don't know if you could say starve, but they would not eat, right? Shtei showers, these 2 hours, the kavana zu, for this purpose. Even though right after they finish the meal, they're going to learn anyway. So what's really the difference? There's a difference. V'chein, and this is the last case that we talked about last time. Im boilem piv, milidaber dvarim shalibo misave, ma'oid. Lidabra, right? That a person wants to speak. And here we're not even speaking about saying Lashon Hara or anything like that, just speaking nonsense, speaking things that are just not so relevant and not so necessary in life, right? For your words to come out. And he controls himself. And I told you yesterday, the Rebbe, spoke a lot about this idea of instead of fasting, in terms of fasting eating, fast in terms of what you're saying, right? No one's becoming arrogant from that, right? When you fast, it's all of a sudden, I tell you, I didn't mean to, I fast on Monday. Oh, no, I didn't mean to get it out. Okay, Mondays and Thursdays. No, it's only Monday and Thursdays this week. Next week, right? People want to feel like, I'm a big tzaddik, I'm a big this, I'm a big that, whatever, But when you just keep your mouth shut from saying something that you don't need to say, all of a sudden, right, no one's finding out about this. No one's finding out about this. And so the Rebbe very often spoke when people would write to him about the idea of fasting and trying to fix themselves up and how to mitaken different inyanim, right? The Rebbe spoke about this idea of controlling one's speech, of not having to say everything that comes into your mind. It's, by the way, very, very difficult. For most people, it's extremely difficult to do, right? Because once you want to speak, you want to say something. I have to add my point to the conversation. It's like, it's hard. It's hard. So that's what he says here. V'cheinim boilim piv. If a person holds himself back, his mouth back, right? That a person wants so badly to say, and he holds himself back in that moment. From things of this world. V'chein b'hirhure machshavaso. And also its thought process, afil b'miat mizer, even just a little drop. The iskafya sitra acher letata istalak ekar lekuchabricha b'kudushaso le'ela harbe. He says, even if you do it just 1 ounce, 1 millimeter, right? It causes a huge impact in the upper world. So that's what he says here. He says, look at the words that he uses. Right? Harbe. It causes a huge difference. And when there's a huge difference in the upper worlds, it trickles down to this world. So you're making the world a better place. That goodkeit that a person is able to do by controlling himself in these areas that are really, if you think about it, really not so consequential. Right? Anyway, he's going to eat lunch. He's not fasting. Anyway, he doesn't have to say exactly that, those words about this, whatever. It's not so important. But nevertheless, with that, he's able to accomplish a lot. Now he says it even in a direct way. Listen to these words. He says like this. When a person is going to do like this, when he's going to act this way, so then that Kedusha is going to be drawn down onto the person down here in this world. To help him a tremendous amount, to support him a lot. In his avodas Hashem. So a person thinks, what's the big deal? But nevertheless, he becomes like a different person because of it. Right? I told you many times the story of Shmuel Munkes, and I always bring up this story because I think it's so important and so meaningful. Because when he was a young chassid, right, the famous story of when he was in the Farbrengen, right, and they brought out the lung, and he started dancing around with the lung, and everyone was like, "Why are you dancing around with the lung?" This was their delicacy at that time. Imagine nowadays, I guess it's sushi or something like that, whatever it is, right? I don't know if they offered, put a platter of lung on the table. I don't know if anyone would be diving into it, but so the idea is that what happened? He took it, and they're jumping and running, and they're chasing. Finally, he throws it into the garbage. And they're like, what in the world? And so they were all upset with him, and they put him on the table, and they swatted him a few times, why wasting food? What is this business? And then sometime later, the butcher comes running in and says, no, don't eat the lung. It's not kosher. He made a mistake, right? So the question is, how did he know? And they said, how do you know? Like, did you have Ruach HaKodesh or something? Are you a prophet? What are you? What is this? You're a young guy. What is going on here? So, and it says, the Frierdiker Rebbe, in writing about this account, he says that there were some great big Hasidim that were there at that time, much older. There were even people that sat by the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, right? These were very classic, tremendous people. And they didn't pick up on it. And he said the reason why is that he had a certain sensitivity that he developed, right? He was able to read it in himself. He said that he had such a desire to eat this, and he recognized that everyone else had such a desire to eat this. And he said that something that everyone has such a desire for, in this way, it can't be Kedusha. It has to be coming from the opposite side, from Klippa. It has to be. And I said, well, how did you? He said, because from the first time he met the Alter Rebbe, he worked on one thing for 2 years. Whatever he wanted, he didn't do. That's what he did. That was his avoda. Whatever I want, I'm not going to do. It doesn't mean, if I want to eat dinner, so I'm not going to eat dinner. It means, you want to eat chicken, so eat the fish. You want to eat the fish, so eat the chicken. You know what I mean? It's like, don't kach in what I want. So that's what he worked on. And as he worked more and more and more, his sensitivity, apparently, right, became much greater. And that's what he's exactly saying here. Look at the words. Kedusha zu nimshechet. From this kedusha, it's going to be drawn down. The kedusha el yaina, the supernal kedusha al ha'adam lamata, on the person down here below. L'siyo siyo rav, to help him, to support him tremendously. Ba'atzim la'avodaso yizbarach, in his avodas Hashem. That's amazing, right? V'zeh shekasuv razal, that's what the rabbis teach us. Adam mekadesh atzma mi'at lamata, when a person will mekadesh, will make himself holy a little bit down here, right? Mekadshin oiso harbe milamayla. Then Hashem is going to make him tremendous holiness. Levad mashem mekayim mitzvahs aseh shel Torah v'kidashtem. So this is the place where the Alter Rebbe shows us that doing iskafia is actually a mitzvahs aseh d'oraisa. That's what he's saying here. He's paskening right here. Right here, that's the psak. That by doing these acts of holiness, right, it says that your people shall be holy. That's what the Torah says. So what does it mean, your people shall be holy? What does that mean? We're going to walk around with a sign saying, I am holy, right? Be holy. That's not what it means. It says very clearly here, when you mekadesh yourself, when you hold yourself back from doing it's not even the wrong thing. It's just not allowing the nefesh of Bahamis, not allowing the animal soul to be in control. That's where the kedusha comes from. So number one, he says, you're fulfilling a positive commandment, right? So that's what he says. Kishemikadesh atzmon b'muterlo, when you will mekadesh yourself, when you make yourself holy in that which is permissible to you, b'perish v'isdashtem, shetasu atzmechem kedoshim, namely that you will become holy, namely that you will make yourselves holy. That even though in truth, I'm not really separated. I'm not really separated and apart from the Sitra Achar. The Sitra Achar is right here with me. I have all the Sitra Achar coming right here with me. Because like we said all along in chapter 27, by a Beinani or a wannabe Beinani, the nefesh of Bahamis is as strong as when he was born. He's very, very strong. And ulai lakach, right, nivra. For this reason you were created, like we said on page Lamed Dalet, right, a page before. That this same issue, you could have the same issue again and again and again and again and again and again. That's why you were created. So it's not that all of a sudden I'm something different, right? But when I conquer my yetzer, when I conquer my evil inclination, when you do it for an idea of kedusha, I'm doing it because I want to make the world a better place. I want to make me a better place. I want to be in charge. I don't want to just allow my nefesh bahamis to run rampant by me. Then it says you will be holy. Then in the end you will become kadosh. V'muvdal be'emes, in a true way from your sitra acher. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is little by little, Hashem is going to take away all the garbage from me. He's going to scrape away all this crud and all this mud and all this gook and all this whatever that I have on me. How do I do it? This is how to do it. This is the ingredients. This is the key. This is how to do it. Mekadesh yourself in things that are permissible. When you're mekadesh yourself in things that are permissible, right, that accomplishes everything. And that's a game changer. Got it? All right. Mitzvah Hashem, we'll continue with Perek Chav Ches tomorrow.